Hi, I'm Carmen Baskoff here with Lydia Brown. We're the producers of Where We Live, and we're taking a few moments out of your podcast just to ask you to think about making a donation to continue allowing us to produce Where We Live and bring it to you every day. The number to donate is 1-800-584-2788, or you can go online to wnpr.org/donate.
Think about the content that you hear on this station and specifically on this program, where each day we work hard to keep you connected to your community, to the issues that matter most, to the people in your backyard. If that is something that you value, we hope you will support it today. It's quick, it's easy, and it's secure, and it's so appreciated by us. 1-800-584-2788 or online at wnpr.org, and thank you.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Our schedules keep us busy, so it's natural that many of us take a basic skill like reading for granted. So much around us centers on literacy, from understanding assignments at work and school to interpreting road signs or deciding what products to buy at the grocery store. Today, Where We Live, we explore adult literacy. 36 million adults have trouble reading and writing, according to national statistics. We're going to be speaking with a national nonprofit, Pro-Literacy, coming up. First, are you someone who struggled to read as an adult? Did you know where to reach out for help, or did you keep it a secret? We want to hear from you, too. You can join our conversation today. As always, find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Now, a member of the community actually pitched this show idea to us, saying adult literacy doesn't get discussed a lot in our society. We're going to talk more about why that is in a few minutes, but we wanted to begin by hearing a first-person account of someone who struggled to read as an adult. So I want to welcome into our studios here Komi Ogbenohevi, who's a Hartford resident. Komi, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So, Komi, you have a soft voice, so make sure you talk right into that microphone nice and loud so our listeners can hear you. So, Komi, tell us a little bit about your personal story. So you're actually from Togo, a country in West Africa. Tell us about where you come from and when you ended up in Connecticut.
I came from Togo, country in West Africa. I got here almost 2 years. I won a GV3 lottery visa.
In 2017, you came to the U.S. So you won a visa, so you're able to come to this country. So what was that like to come to a new place?
At the beginning, I was a little bit scared because I don't know what I had to deal with, the expectation, and I had kind of pressure on me, all my families, and I was going to start a new life with new people, a new culture, people I don't know. I don't really know what I expect you, but when I got here, everything went smoothly with me, for me.
So at first you were scared, a lot of pressure on you, but once you arrived here in Hartford, Connecticut, you felt a little bit better. So tell us what your English ability was when you arrived. Did you know any English? Were you able to read or write English?
Yes, when I was back home in Togo, I studied American literature. My reading and writing skills are good, but I had difficulty to express myself. Then when I got here, I set a goal for myself. I said in 6 months, I can speak fluently. Then I did it.
Mm-hmm. So many of us are familiar with learning a foreign language, so say in school, and so we learn maybe basic Spanish or French, but once we go to a foreign country where that language is spoken, it's hard to feel confident to speak what you have learned. So you set a goal for yourself. How did you find help to learn better English?
Literacy volunteer helped me a lot. When I got there, I was a little shy, and the tutor said, you're starting a new life. Don't be shy. We are here to help you. Every time they come to me, you gotta talk, and if you have something, just say, if not correct, We just correct you. It will help you to improve yourself. And I did it.
So you just mentioned Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. So this is the nonprofit organization that you heard about. Who told you about this group?
It's my uncle. When I got here, he said, seeing you know how to work now, you can start taking some class at literacy volunteer. 2 days when I got here, he brought me at LVGH. And I talked with Paula. I signed the paper. And the next week, I started with the classes.
So in studio with us is someone from Literacy Volunteers who helped Comey, and her name is CJ House. She's Executive Director of Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. CJ, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Comey was telling us his uncle actually brought him to Literacy Volunteers to get better with English skills. So is that a common referral where community members know someone who's struggling and they say, hey, I know of a nonprofit that can help you?
It's very common. Most of our students are come to us through family members, through someone who is a student. Interestingly, we're seeing a lot of students coming through Facebook as well. They'll be messaging us through Facebook as well. But when Comey first arrived at Literacy Volunteers, he was very quiet. He was very shy. He was afraid to speak. And to have observed and been able to witness his journey from that scared person who arrived here with no family here, and to blossom into who he is today is just one of the magical things we get to do at Literacy Volunteers.
When new immigrants come to this country, one of the first things, besides finding a place to live, is they need to find a job. And so to not be able to understand what someone's saying or to read instructions, that can be a real barrier.
Absolutely. It starts with, one of the things I love most about what we're able to do is really get to the root of helping someone become independent. Once you have a command of the language, once you can communicate, so many other things become possible, including getting a job, learning how to take the bus to get to that job. So all of those things are things that are incorporated in the process.
Mm-hmm. So, Comey, how often were you going to Literacy Volunteers to get better with your reading and writing during the week?
At the beginning, every morning, Tuesday and Thursday morning, then Monday and Wednesday afternoon. And now Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
And when you went to Literacy Volunteers, did you have the same person helping you each time, or just curious about the people that helped you when you went there?
Yes, the same people.
So, CJ, tell us about who the people are. Many are volunteers?
Many are volunteers. We have about 225 volunteers between our two centers. We have a center in Hartford and a center in East Hartford. Comey started with us taking English for speakers of other languages, the SOL classes. We start with wherever the student is and whatever the student's strengths are and whatever the student needs. So Comey needed to learn English, to speak English. His reading and writing skills are actually quite good and are still quite good, even better. But Comey also worked with our career pathways facilitator, who is a person who helps our students, once they have enough of a grasp of the language, to make that bridge between what's your next step. Your next step may be getting a job. In Comey's case, it was getting a job. It was also going on to college. So that's another professional. So there's a staff of we have 12 professionals, educators, career counselors who are there. And then we have the 225 volunteers who do everything from teaching the classes, teaching whether it's English for speakers of other languages or math or citizenship or basic literacy, digital literacy. We have labs where our volunteers are teaching there too. Whatever issues get in the way of someone getting to their goal, there's somebody there that will help them get that pathway.
I understand, Comey, you're now in college, so by connecting with Literacy Volunteers, that helped you know how to apply?
Yeah, they helped me. After with the career pathway facilitator, at the beginning, we were trying to get the GAG. Then I told him, I've been at the college back home. And he said, oh, that's good. You don't have to pass the GAG. I know some people at Capital that can help you get in college. and we did it.
So you're now a freshman at Capital Community College, right in downtown Hartford. But you're also working. Tell us about where you work.
I'm working at Dunkin' Donuts and downtown Central Row.
And you mentioned that you started going there, but you're still going to Literacy Volunteers to continue to strengthen your skills. So what is your goal, Comey, once you graduate?
Right now, my goal is get in law college, and I have people that helping me now to achieve those goals. Last year at the gala, I met some lawyer, and that I'm still talking with right now. They're trying to help me to navigate through my goal.
So you want to go to law school after completing at Capital Community College. CJ, he mentioned a gala, so this was an event where people heard Comey's story for the Literacy Volunteers.
So every year we have an annual gala. Our gala this year will be on March 30th. Last year, Comey spoke and told his story to about 250 of our supporters, of our stakeholders, of our donors. And Comey was a little bit more nervous then than he was today to come onto the show. And by the end of the speech, he actually went back up and did an ad lib. So that was the point at which we realized that Comey's confidence level was growing as well. So he told his story, and I think one of the important things about having students tell their story is that this is very often a hidden population. People don't see people who are learning English as another language or are low literate and can read or write. And to know how hard that is and what a challenge it is to come and do that, to be able to share that story, it's just a whole lot more powerful coming from the student.
And we're going to be hearing more about some of the challenges that people in the United States face who have trouble reading and writing. But I do want to thank Comey Ogbenohevi from Hartford, who again was taking and still taking English classes at Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. Comey, you didn't seem nervous at all. I thought you did a great job. It's hard to talk on the radio.
Oh, no. I'm confident now.
Comey's real goal is he's going to be our next ambassador. We're going to get him to the UN. That's it.
Well, Comey, thank you again for coming in to talk with us.
It's a pleasure.
From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Today we're talking more about this issue that we don't talk often about in our society, and that is many Americans, 36 million Americans, in fact, who struggle to read and write. We're going to talk about why that is and why that rate hasn't gone down in recent years. And we also want to hear from you. Are you someone who struggled with reading and writing as an adult? Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live.
Hi, I'm Carmen Baskoff here with Lydia Brown. We're the producers of Where We Live. Thanks for joining us today and listening to Where We Live, the podcast. It does take a lot of work, as Lydia and I both know, to put together a show like this with so many different voices and coming to you, be a part of supporting that. The number to call, 1-800-584-2788, or go online to wnpr.org/donate.
We are so happy to have you listening to this podcast. We found that oftentimes people don't even realize that it exists. They just think that we broadcast between 9 and 10 a.m. and 7 and 8 p.m. But the reality is that you can go online and listen at any time of day, at your convenience. It's there for you, and we hope that you'll support it as well. Again, that number, 1-800-584-2788, 1-800-584-2788. Go online to wnpr.org. It's quick, it's easy, it's secure, and thank you so much in advance.
This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Today we're focusing on literacy. Did you know across the U.S., 36 million Americans have difficulty reading? Does that number surprise you? Are you one of them? Join our conversation. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. We just heard from a student at Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford, someone who came to this country from Togo, who needed help strengthening his English skills. CJ House is in studio with me. She's executive director of this Connecticut-based nonprofit, Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. So it sounds like many of your students are new immigrants, but doesn't mean that all of them are?
No, many of our students are new immigrants, about two-thirds of our students, and the other third are students who can speak English but can't read or write it. And that population may be individuals who come from an English-speaking country where they did not have access to education. But I think the sad part is that it is also a significant portion of that population are people who are graduates of the K through 12 system here in the States, who are graduating high school and unable to read and write.
We talked about this national statistic, but maybe let's just drill down more into what you were just saying, CJ, about locally. I mean, how many people, how many adults in Hartford struggle with reading?
So our city is in a crisis. The newest statistics that we have indicate that there are about 70% of Hartford adults are reading below a sixth grade level. And about a little over 40% are reading below a third grade level. So the impact that has on a community, we can talk about the impact on an individual, but the impact on a community is with low literacy comes poverty. With low literacy comes increased hospitalization. And the saddest piece is that the best predictor of a child's literacy level is that child's parents' literacy level. So it is a generational crisis. That we just absolutely have no choice but to address. That's kind of the bad news, the scary news. The good news is when we tackle this problem and when we tackle this challenge, it has a wonderful domino effect. It's a keystone skill. You learn to read, you learn to write, you learn to communicate. You can get a job. You can your health, access health care. It impacts a whole lot of other social issues that we deal with.
Maybe walk us through more of that. At the start of the show, I talked about it. It's hard. It's easy for us to take for granted that reading is a basic skill, right? Because words are around us each and every day. We have to communicate with people. So walk us through someone's day where they're coming across different scenarios, and if they are low literate, that can be a problem.
So I like to think about it if you're traveling. Which is a fun thing to do as opposed to trying to get through your life. But you're traveling and you're all of a sudden dumped in a country that you don't know the language. What's the first thing you do? You look for someone who speaks English because it's really hard to figure out the train schedule, figure out how to get to your hotel. For someone who is low literate in this country, for the most part, many of our students have developed strategies to manage. And you probably know someone who's low literate, but they're not going to tell, and you haven't seen it because they go to fill out a form. They'll go, I can't fill out the form. I need my glasses. But the kinds of practical things that someone will face, you get a prescription for your child. Can you read it? Do you know if it's oral or oral? Does it go in the child's mouth? Does it go in the child's ear? Can you read a bus schedule? Can you get from here to there to get to your work? We lived in a society where there were a lot of jobs where you didn't need to read or write.
In studio with me is CJ House, Executive Director of Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. It's a Connecticut-based nonprofit. As we talk about adult illiteracy, are you one of many Americans, 36 million Americans who struggle to read and write? How has that impacted you in your life? You can join our conversation. Chris is calling from North Branford. Chris, go ahead.
I'm extremely dyslexic. I've had trouble reading and writing pretty much all my life. Growing up, I went to two schools that specialize in LD, learning disabilities. One was in Southport, Connecticut. The other one was a high school in Hardwick, Mass, called Eagle Hill School. And right now, I decided to go back to school, and I am in paramedic school, which is no easy task. And I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that I use to help me to kind of get through some of the heavy reading I have to do.
Sure, go ahead.
So all of our books come with, they're narrated. And I found that is an amazing tool. When you have to read, a few hundred pages a night or something like that, it allows me to get through a lot of material. And for the books that I don't have on tape, if there's a medical word I'm unfamiliar with, dictionary.com has a lot of pronunciation tools where you could type the word in and it will actually spit it out to you so you can hear it. When I have to do run forms, which are like a patient care report, you have to write up everything that you've done to a patient. text-to-talk, again, is an amazing tool, and sometimes it doesn't pick it up quite well. So one of the things that you can do is that you can actually have it read it back to you. And these are just some of the tools that I've used to kind of make myself successful.
Well, thank you, Chris, for talking about that with us here on Where We Live. Coming up, we're going to talk more about the role that technology can play in helping adults who are low literate. But Chris mentioned, CJ, that he is extremely dyslexic. And so when your volunteers encounter adults who have learning disabilities, maybe mental health issues, how do you navigate that?
Our program is center-based. All of our classes happen in one of our 2 literacy centers. There is a lot of good reasons for that, one of which is if a volunteer comes across a situation, whether it's a learning disability situation or mental health situation, there are professionals right there on staff to intervene who know how to help. I do want to thank Chris, who called in, because one of the great things that happens when you're in a class and have a community, you have people like Chris in your class with you who have been struggling with the same kinds of issues, who come up with great strategies for dealing with it. So there is that sharing of peer-to-peer. So that also happens in class, things like what Chris just said.
You mentioned you have 2 centers, one in Hartford and one in East Hartford. When I think of individual communities, and there are many in Connecticut, oftentimes community centers, senior centers, libraries are places people feel comfortable to seek out help. So how do you get into those places?
So we have a network out there of all kinds of providers, libraries, schools, who refer people over to us. There is a model of literacy, an old literacy volunteer model where most people think about one-on-one teaching in one tutor and one student in a library working on a book. We don't do that because adults learn better in groups. Because in a center, and our centers are. Both of them are on multiple bus lines, so they're very accessible. But in a center, you can provide a real sense of community, which we know helps adults keep coming to class. That's one of the big challenges. When you're an adult and you're going to school, you have a whole lot of other things going in your life. I always like to say, how many of us start on Monday and say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week? And how many of us get to the gym 3 times a week? Well, these are people who are committing to come to class 3, 4, 5 times a week. Along with work, along with managing their families. So having a community of people, students and tutors, volunteers, who are right there, who are looking forward to seeing you, who want you to be there in class, who are going to give you grief if you don't show up, that is an incentive to get people to come. So there really isn't the necessity, and it actually isn't a great model, service delivery model, to have people all over the place. We also are able to support our tutors. Again, as I say, we've got educators on staff, and there's an accountability measure where we know what's going on in the classrooms, what's working, what's not working, how we can intervene to make it a better experience for the student.
You're listening to Where We Live. I'm Lucine Alpathanchel. My guest in studio is CJ House, Executive Director of Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. As we talk about the problem of adult illiteracy, we keep mentioning this, how this is a problem nationwide. So I wanted to bring into the conversation Kevin Morgan, President and CEO of Pro Literacy. This is actually an international nonprofit based in Syracuse, New York. Kevin, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
We've been talking to CJ from Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. This is a part or member of Pro Literacy. So let's talk a little bit about why adult illiteracy is not often discussed in our society, Kevin.
I think a lot of times when we talk about education, we want to focus on childhood education. And the irony is that adult literacy impacts childhood education. So you had mentioned why hasn't this number decreased earlier in your program, and one of the reasons is that children whose parents have low literacy levels, they have a 72% chance of being at the low reading level themselves, and so it perpetuates itself as they go through the school system. Eventually, a lot of these children become adults with low literacy levels. So it doesn't get a lot of attention, and one of the things that Pro Literacy does, aside from research and developing educational content and professional development for our members, is advocacy. So we're thrilled that you're talking about this today because we need to shine a light on this. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but yet it has the ability to really have economic impact in a lot of different areas for the country.
So when we talk about adult illiteracy, often in Connecticut we talk about education disparities and the fact that children in cities are not meeting educational standards compared to the wealthy suburbs. When we were talking about doing this show, Kevin, the question always comes up, right? Like, if somebody can't read, how are they able to then in the school system be promoted to the next grade and the next grade? I mean, how do we get to that fundamental root? Because eventually they will be adults who are low literate.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've interviewed a lot of adult learners over the years, and the one thing that you hear over and over again is, first of all, they're smart individuals, and they recognized early on. A lot of times we hear by the time they were in third grade, they realized they were behind and they were never going to catch up. And so they melted into the back of the classroom, hoping no one would ever call on them, and they get passed along. And then before you know it, they're adults. And so I think it can be addressed in the school system, but it really has to be addressed. There has to be a parallel path that addresses the adult literacy issue. Otherwise, you'll just keep, facing this situation where we're looking at trying to improve K through 12 test scores, but in reality, we have to also look at increasing adult literacy rates as well.
Kevin, you mentioned the economic impact beyond the individual who is struggling. How the fact that 36 million Americans are low literate, how is that impacting us based on the economic opportunities that are available?
Well, it's a global economy now, and there was a great study that came out in 2013, the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies. It measured 24 developing countries' reading, numeracy, and the ability to interact with technology on a daily basis. It's a great study. It should have set off alarm bells in Washington when it came out in 2013. Ironically, the reason it didn't was the government was shut down in 2013 when the study came out. But the United States really was way down among 24 developing countries. So when you're looking at the workforce, the quality of the workforce, economic development, if you increase adult literacy rates, it has a positive impact not only on economic development, but poverty, crime, and a host of other social issues that you read in the headlines every day. So it needs to be addressed not only from a federal and state level, but also from a private sector level. Right now, you've got a situation where we've got effectively full employment in this country. You have a labor shortage, and the answer is to bring in traditionally marginalized adults who, have a lower education, high school dropouts, low literacy adults, former inmates, and bring them into the workforce through education.
One of your member organizations is in studio with us here on Where We Live, and that's CJ House, Executive Director of Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. So how do you do your work? Who's supporting your nonprofit, CJ?
We are very fortunate in that our funding is diverse. We have state funding, we have private funding, we have some wonderful individual donors. I think this community benefits significantly from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, which is doesn't only send out money, but also is very engaged in resolving the problem and getting people together. I think, talking a little bit more about what Kevin was saying is the approach to this issue can't come from one sector. And it is not, it's complex. The K through 12 system can't fix it. Digital literacy, much as we would love to have a magic bullet that would fix it, it can't. We need to have a community response. And it's, I personally, my education was very European as opposed to American, and I think that the American K through 12 system needs to take a good hard look at beginning with the student and the student's strengths, as opposed to beginning with a test score and trying to get a student to a test score. But it needs to be an effort that comes from many different angles. When we have an individual student coming in who needs to learn English, that's a beginning point. But that individual then also needs help to get to the next point, which may be it may be something as simple as being able to participate in a parent-teacher conference and teaching them the skills of advocacy that they need to do when they go into that parent-teacher conference. Another path may be job skills. We have a couple of job training programs that they can be in. Career counseling, figuring out what's out there. In Connecticut, we have a skills gap, but we have really a skills misalignment where we actually have people who have high school diplomas, who have college diplomas. They just don't happen to be in the fields in which the industries in Connecticut need them to be in. Yeah.
I was thinking often is discussed here in Connecticut are the defense contractors that are looking for adults who can do these jobs, and so there's partnerships between certain community colleges to get people's math and science skills up. But am I hearing what you're saying, that when we think about the private sector, there needs to be more investment also in helping adults with low literacy skills to get to that point?
To get to that point, because that's where our population growth is in the state, is in the new immigrants. If we did not have new immigrants coming into the state, we would be losing people. So we need to bring those skills up, the basic literacy skills up, and then to the next level. We teach math. STEM is the big, I couldn't do. I have multiple degrees. I could not do advanced manufacturing. So it has to be a combination of forces coming in to resolve this.
You can join our conversation here on literacy on Where We Live. Again, 36 million Americans struggle to read and write. On the phone with us, again, is Kevin Morgan, President and CEO of Pro Literacy, an international nonprofit based in Syracuse. Kevin, when we think about the types of jobs available out there in our economy for low literate Americans, so what kind of jobs are they having to take, and is there evidence that private sectors are stepping up to help some of these workers?
Yeah, it's finally happening. I think 10 years ago, a lot of times when we would talk to employers and try to get them to invest in adult education for their workers, they were actually concerned that if they educated their workers, they may leave. And so now what we're seeing is you have companies, there's a lot of examples out there recently where Taco Bell, for instance, some of the hospitality industry, hotels are actually funding high school equivalency education for their workers to get their high school equivalency degree and post-secondary education. So they recognize that not only is that a recruitment tool to attract workers, but it's also a great tool to keep workers and promote workers from within. It just makes good economic sense if you want to attract workers. I heard CJ's comment earlier in the program about, a lot of the blue-collar jobs, the entry-level blue-collar jobs, they really don't exist anymore in the sense that no one's going to hand you a hammer and say, hit that anymore. It's going to be operate the computer so that you can operate the plasma cutter to cut the steel. I mean, it's even the blue-collar jobs have some digital component to them, so you have to be able to interact with technology. You need to be able to read, and some of the other workforce skills, just being able to work within a team atmosphere, showing up on time. Those are all things that help people prepare for the workforce.
Kirk is calling from East Hartford. Kirk, what's your question or comment?
Well, this question's for CJ. I'm a small business owner in East Hartford, and what, as an individual or even as a small business owner, can I do to help support the program? Because I think it affects, not only us in East Hartford, but clearly Hartford as well.
I would love for you to place a phone call, and you and I can talk, because there is a lot of things that a small business person can do. Including, we may have, if you're looking for employees, we may be able to help you with that. We may be helpful to just get the word out to your employees that we are a service that is available in East Hartford. You probably have some employees who are low literate that we could help. So let's talk, please.
So we'll pass along Kirk's phone number to our in-studio guest, CJ House, Executive Director of Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. CJ, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Also on the phone with us was Kevin Morgan, President and CEO of Pro Literacy, an international nonprofit based in Syracuse, New York. Kevin, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
This is Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation about literacy, learn more about advances in technology to help people who are low literate. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. So how can communities work to make literacy more accessible? My next guest leads a $7 million competition focused on developing and deploying mobile tools to help those who read at or below a third grade level. I want to welcome onto the show Dr. Shlomi Katan, Executive Director of the Adult Literacy X Prize. Shlomi, welcome to our show.
Good morning, Lucy. Thanks for having me on.
So this sounds exciting. What is X Prize exactly?
It's a good question. So X Prize is a nonprofit organization that's been around 25 years that essentially believes in a more optimistic future for humanity and for the planet. And what do I mean by that? We believe that the world overall is getting better because of technology, but that we as humans need to do something with that in order to more equally and democratically distribute that overall improvement in human life. So we live longer, healthier, easier lives than we have before on a global scale, but that's not evenly distributed. And we believe that human beings are the ones that can solve those challenges. And one of the important aspects of that is that today, because of technology, because of smartphones and computer technology and robotics and artificial intelligence and all these other technologies that are coming online over the next decade or so at a massive level, more people than ever can solve those problems, and we can solve them better. And what X Prize does is enable those solutions through these large-scale incentive prize competitions. That's a model that's existed for centuries. It actually is responsible for canning and for transatlantic flights. But essentially, if you put out a target, you tell people, here's the problem that we want you to solve, and we will incentivize you to solve it. Someone will go out and solve it. And if we can rely on the genius of the crowd to do that, we're much more likely to get a solution that is better for more people.
So you're focusing in on adult literacy. Tell us how and who are the finalists that are working on these mobile tools?
Yeah, so X Prize works across a number of sectors, ranging from ocean health to oil cleanup to space exploration, and then, of course, education. That's one of the challenge areas that we believe is important to address. The Adult Literacy X Prize is a competition for mobile app developers to develop the type of learning technology that adult learners can use anytime, anywhere to improve their literacy skills. It targets both native speakers of English and English language learners who read at or below the equivalent of a third grade level, to use kind of a colloquial term for that. And we launched the competition just about 3.5 years ago in June of 2015. At that point, there weren't a lot of technology solutions available. In fact, if you look at mobile apps, there were only 2 companies in the world that were developing mobile software for adults at this level of skill. We put up a prize, $7 million in total. We had 705 teams pre-register, 109 teams actually register to compete, and today we're down to 5 finalists, and those 5 finalists include a startup from California, a company that's been in K-12 education for over 20 years in San Diego, California. We have one organization that is a university team competing out of Amrita University, which is the top-ranked private university in India, as well as a collaboration amongst LIFT, which is Literacy Instruction for Texas, a 57-year-old nonprofit serving adult learners in Greater Dallas, collaborating together with Southern Methodist University, both their School of Education and their School of Engineering. And then finally another startup started by technologists in Hong Kong and educators in the United States. So those are the 5 finalists. They've all built a diverse set of learning tools that seem to be working really well for the adults who use them.
On the phone with me is Dr. Shlomi Katan, Executive Director of the Adult Literacy X Prize. We're hearing a little bit about the finalists for this $7 million competition to create mobile tools to help those who are low literate or reading at or below a third grade level. Once you choose the finalists, how do you expect to then have access to those who really need it, those who live in high poverty areas? And I'm just curious about how long that can take.
I think there's 2 levels to that question. One question is the access that adult learners have to the devices and to the online capabilities that will make it possible for them to access these tools. And then the second is, how do you actually get market penetration? When we launched the competition, about 2/3 of low literacy adults in the United States had regular access to a mobile device, whether it were a smartphone or a tablet. Today, that number is creeping up to close to 80 to 85%, pretty much in line with smartphone penetration for the general population, which makes sense when you think about it. When about 15% of the adult population in the United States is low literate, then you wouldn't be able to get the close to 90% penetration of smartphones that we have in the general population without making significant inroads into low income and also low literacy communities. Now, what these smartphone users usually don't have is robust data plans. So they'll use prepaid phones, and they'll also use publicly available free Wi-Fi, be it at the library or at a coffee shop, or increasingly more and more cities and municipalities are providing free Wi-Fi access throughout the city. So as that happens, that gives more people opportunities to access these tools. And often the cell phone is the single and only way that low literacy individuals are accessing the internet. We know that they have the devices to do so. Often there's some usage gaps, maybe not the same level of fluency in terms of using something like the App Store or Google Play, but nonetheless have access to the tools and know how to use them and precisely to address the needs that those individuals have, just like all of us do. So that's the first piece. The second piece, though, is a question of go-to-market strategies and penetration. As with any company, we know that some companies will be commercially successful and some won't be, regardless of how effective their tools are. So one of the things that XPRIZE is doing together with the funders of this competition, so this is a competition that was funded by the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, which is a 30-year-old foundation serving family literacy needs in the United States, and the Dollar General Literacy Foundation, which has a similarly long history of funding adult education organizations throughout the country. They funded the Adult Literacy XPRIZE. And these three organizations together, XPRIZE together with these funders, believe that one of the important ways we're going to get these tools into the hands of the learners who need them most is to make it possible for them to get it for free for as long as possible.
Well,
so,
it's certainly, we're going to be running out of time soon. Dr. Shlomi Katan, again, Executive Director of the Adult Literacy XPRIZE. We heard from our guests earlier that said that technology is not a silver bullet, but it can help when you have so many people with smartphones. But we want to thank you, Shlomi, for telling us about this really exciting venture, and we can't wait to hear more.
Of course. Glad to be on, and thanks for having me.
Again, Shlomi Katan, Executive Director of the Adult Literacy XPRIZE. We want to also thank our previous guests, as well as our technical producer, who's Kion Wolf. Our senior producer is Lydia Brown. Thanks to Carmen Baskoff on the phones. You can learn more about the show at wnpr.org/wherewelive. We'll tweet out more information about the XPRIZE, Adult Literacy XPRIZE competition at Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. As always, thanks for listening.